and welcome to this presentation about the Novi Middle School 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip. We are so excited that you are considering this opportunity for your student. It is a wonderful experience that all of our 8th graders look forward to every year and that they remember for years and years to come. Now, we do start the registration process while your child is in 7th grade, looking forward to the trip when they are in 8th grade, because this trip does take a lot of organization, and planning and registering now does also give you the opportunity to set up a payment plan that allows you to pay for the cost of this trip starting now and carrying through to right before the trip. Looking at dates for this trip, it is November 8th through 11th of 2022, which is a Tuesday through a Friday. When we think about goals of this trip, why are we taking these 8th graders on this trip to Washington, D.C.? We first want to bring history alive for students, increasing their appreciation and understanding of the past. So when they're in 8th grade, they are in a U.S. history class at the beginning of the year. They are learning about the American Revolution, about civics, about early presidents. And then in November, they get to go to Washington, D.C. and see the Declaration of Independence, see the Constitution, visit these memorials that are dedicated to the early presidents. And when they're able to make connections between what they're learning in class and what they're seeing on this trip, there really is a there's powerful learning that takes place there. In addition, we also want to develop students' interpersonal skills as they live together for more than 3 days. So students spend a lot of time together with other students and with chaperones as they are on this trip. So they learn how to live together with other people. When there's 50 plus people on a bus, how do we keep it clean? How do we cooperate and make it an enjoyable experience for everyone? When they're sharing a hotel room with other students, how do they live together in that space cooperatively? And then the other thing that we want to do is enable students to grow individually and assuming responsibility for themselves. So moms, dads, parents, guardians are not coming along on this trip with them. So students do need to assume a lot of responsibility, remembering when they're leaving their hotel room to grab their charger and their coat, choosing which food option they want for dinner, making sure they keep their money in a safe place, and then deciding how they want to spend it. These are all great experiences for students to just grow a little bit in their responsibility. Now, these are things to keep in mind as you are thinking about, is my child ready for this trip? Are they able to live with a large group of people for 3 days? Are they able to be responsible for themselves and communicate their needs with the adult chaperones that are on the trip? It is a lot that's placed on them. It's a fun trip, but there's also these skills that they need to have as well. When we're looking at our itinerary, you'll see here that the trip itinerary is subject to change. So we typically take about 65% to 70% of our 8th grade class on this trip, which means we're taking about 350 plus students. And we cannot roll up to the majority of these places with all 350 of our students. They simply cannot accommodate that many people at the same time. So what will happen is each bus kind of does their own trip, does things in a little bit different order so we're not overwhelming these places. And then what students will find is that by the time we leave on Friday, they will all at some point have gone to the same locations and had the same experiences. So that being said, everyone does depart at 5:30 a.m. bright and early in the morning from the middle school. We ask that for this first day, students bring their own lunch to eat on the bus so that when we're stopping, we're not trying to feed everyone, we're simply using the restroom. The bus drivers might change, or there might be some refueling of the bus happening, but for the most part, we are on the road and ready to go. Once we get to DC in about the mid-afternoon, We usually try to hit a few museums. The Museum of American History and the Air and Space Museum are two very popular museums that students tend to enjoy. Then students will have dinner. In a few slides, we'll talk about what some of those dinner options look like. And then after dinner, it's very typical that students will visit some of the outdoor memorials like the Korean Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Vietnam Memorial. And again, these are all great experiences for students. They really, it's a great moment of reflection for them as they're thinking about what do all of these memorials mean and what is their significance. On Wednesday, we have a jam-packed day, so we usually end up waking up around 7 a.m. and having breakfast. Usually it takes place in the hotel. Our first stop is Arlington National Cemetery, and this is one of the greatest moments of the trip when you realize it's Wednesday. We're not sitting at desks in a classroom. We're walking into the cemetery as the leaves are changing color, and we're getting to experience the changing of the guard. And it's a great moment for students and chaperones alike. We usually will stop at the Iwo Jima Memorial as well as the Pentagon 9/11 Memorial, which usually students really remember the Pentagon Memorial as 9/11 is more recent history, and that hits a little bit closer to home. We'll make a stop for lunch before going to Ford's Theater, where Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, and then they also get to visit the Peterson House across the street where he eventually died. We make a stop at the National Archives where students get to see the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. While we don't go up to the top of the Washington Monument, as there's been some construction going on the past few years, we do stop there for a photo stop. It's a great chance for students to just kind of be outdoors and take some fun pictures. Then we go to dinner and we wrap up the evening with the Old Alexandria Ghost Walk tour. Now, a lot of times students will read that and think, ooh, spooky haunted house. A better way to think of it is it's more like going to Greenfield Village. There's presenters who are dressed up in period costume, and they tell some historical stories that are just a tad bit spooky to students, and it really is a lot of fun. It's not something to be scared of. Again, our third day, Thursday, is very, very full. We start with breakfast again. We take a tour of the U.S. Capitol, so getting to see where both houses of Congress meet. We get to go to the Library of Congress. It's an absolutely beautiful building. While we don't go into the Supreme Court, students do get the opportunity to take a picture on the front steps. We'll stop for lunch and then hit some museums. Usually the Museum of African American History and Culture, which is a newer museum that our students really tend to enjoy. There's kind of two focuses of that museum. There's a lower level that focuses on slavery and civil rights and educating students about those time periods. And then there's an upper part of the museum that focuses more on culture and African American contributions to sports, entertainment, music, TV, film, and a lot of really cool exhibits there. Other memorials that we might hit are the FDR Memorial, and then after dinner, the MLK Jr. Memorial, Jefferson Memorial, and World War II Memorial. Also thrown in there is the National Portrait Gallery that has a portrait of every president of the United States, as well as some other cool exhibits. And then on our last day, which is Friday, we start again with breakfast, stopping by the White House just for a picture. We don't go inside. Last year was the first year we went to the Spy Museum. Students really enjoyed it. It's very interactive. They start out their journey through the museum getting a code name and a mission that they have to complete as they work their way through the museum. There's also the Museum of Natural History, stopping for lunch, and then after lunch is when we depart DC. We do have dinner on the road, so students got to pick which sandwich they would like in a boxed lunch so that we can keep driving right on through from DC back to Novi. And then depending on how much traffic we hit leaving DC, how much construction there is, what the weather is, we will return home around midnight, and we do have students update their parents as we get closer to Novi with a more specific time that we will be arriving. Another thing to note as before we go into this tour company information is that you can see is we have a jam-packed, very busy tour. This trip is an awesome experience for students. It's fun, it's enjoyable, but at the same time, it is also exhausting. And it can be relatively physically demanding. We do walk 7, 8, 9 miles a day, especially on Wednesday and Thursday. So that is something else to consider when you're thinking about, is my child ready for this trip? Will they be able to physically keep up with the demands of the trip? As we take this trip, we have been working with the tour company World Strides for over 10 years. Their motto is that they are committed to providing exceptional service, superior safety, and memories that will last a lifetime. We have a contact person, Tina DeSimone, who works with us all the way through the process of registering, making payments, and then being on the trip. And then the World Strides website is there. I will say that since we bring such a large group of students to Washington, D.C., World Strides is very appreciative of our business, and they work so well with us and accommodate so many of our needs while we are on the trip. So they have been a great company to work with, and they're really dedicated to making it the best experience for your students. In looking at transportation, we do use Blue Lakes Charters. So these are nice buses. They have overhead bins for jackets and backpacks. There are power outlets. There's movie screens, so chaperones will play videos on the trip. And students are on these buses from Novi to DC and back, as well as we drive around the different locations in DC. So we really focus on telling them that we need to keep these buses neat and clean so that everyone can enjoy their time traveling around on this bus. This year we will be staying at the DoubleTree Crystal City, which is in Arlington. We have stayed at this hotel in past years, bringing in over 350 students. We take up multiple floors. Our students are usually grouped in hallways together so that they're not interspersed between a lot of other hotel customers. And you'll also see in a picture here that we do eat breakfast at the hotel as well. And thinking about trip security, for our trip, we only take Novi School District employees as chaperones. So most of them are middle school teachers. We have had Novi Meadows teachers go with us. Dr. Matthews, the superintendent, has gone. School board members have gone. But at the end of the day, it is not parents of our students that go. In selecting these chaperones, we do take enough so that the ratio of chaperones to students is about 1 chaperone per 12 students. We actually receive a lot of compliments from the World Strides course leaders so that they appreciate that it is teachers who are the chaperones on this trip, because our teachers know the students, they know the expectations, they know the rules, and they're able to equitably enforce them. When the chaperones from Novi have some time to rest and sleep at night, there are nighttime security chaperones that are stationed in the hallways of the hotel where students are housed. They are there from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. To make sure students are staying in their rooms and to help with any situations that might require the help of an adult. We also have licensed tour guides through World Strides that travel around each day with our buses. They are extremely knowledgeable. They're used to working with groups of students, so they are able to point out things that our students should look at and focus on at the different locations. And they really just impart a lot of knowledge on our students throughout the trip. Also, in traveling with World Strides, there is a 24-hour contact service. So the minute students get on the bus at Novi Middle School preparing to leave for Washington, D.C., the chaperones will put a wristband on them that has contact information. So if for some reason students end up separated from the group, there's always a number on that wristband that they or somebody else can call to make sure that they get back with our group. Through World Strides, we also have access to doctors on call, which we have used in the past, whether someone has an allergic reaction, whether someone has a sore throat or maybe an ear infection. These doctors on call will come to us, whether it's at the hotel, whether it's at one of the museums or a restaurant. They will come to us and make sure that whoever is not feeling well or needs medical attention receives the care that they need. And World Strides also has trip liability insurance. We do eat a lot of meals while we are on this trip. They are eaten in a variety of places, but unfortunately the list will not be finalized until October. Places may include food courts where students have a handful of different options of restaurants to choose from, buffets and family style restaurants. So we've gone to different pizza places where they have choices of pizza to eat. We've gone to Buca di Beppo and Champs as well. We are able to accommodate a variety of dietary needs and restrictions, such as vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free, and allergies. So we will make sure that there is safe food for your child to eat if they have any needs or restrictions. And then thinking about COVID, we can't quite escape it. Know that World Strides and Novi Middle School will follow all required safety precautions, whatever they might be, when we take this trip in 2022. Unfortunately, we cannot tell you what those procedures and precautions are at this time because things are ever evolving. Things have changed so much, not only in the last year, but even in the last 3 or 4 months. So as we get closer to November of 2022, as World Strides continues to update their safety standards, as the CDC and Student and Youth Travel Association make changes, we will keep you updated with that information that we have so that everyone is prepared to follow those precautions and procedures.